I now call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Director Poston, would you please read the board priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership, direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Director Hayes, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Yes, I'll be happy to. The mission statement is to enhance these students' abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community, and our vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Hayes. We will move on to presentations. I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Well, first of all, I want to thank President Goza for attending our first presentation. The Davenport Community School District won an award for Best Sustainability and Education Awards, dedication to recycling and waste management. I do believe we have Debbie here with us. Debbie, are you here with us? Would you mind coming up and giving a presentation about what this award's about, and then your day in Cedar Rapids with President Goza? Thank you. And thanks for coming tonight. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Will you also give an introduction of you and your role in the district, please?
Yes, my name is Debbie Marr-Heitman, and I am over in the Operations and Maintenance Department. I take care of several different things in the district. I am usually the first person that somebody will reach out to if they're too hot or too cold. So yes, sometimes I'm called the air conditioning lady, and sometimes I'm called the trash lady for the recycling efforts. And yes, thank you very much for letting me come and talk to you about a great award that we recently received. So the Iowa Recycling Association presented us with an award last week for the 2021 Best Sustainability and Education Program. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. And yes, I want to thank you again, President Goza, for volunteering so much of your time to go all the way to Cedar Rapids to accept that award. I think sometimes people forget how much time and effort school board members actually give to our community and our students. So thank you. I'll read a little bit about the press release that we have. So if you didn't see this, this is what went out last week, and I'll just read a few of the paragraphs here. Davenport Community School District's environmentally friendly practices started decades ago, and their efforts are still going strong. In 2019, they were awarded the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon School District Sustainability Award, a mouthful, and was one of only 5 school districts nationwide to receive a Center for Green Schools District Scholarship Award. The district has been increasing their sustainability efforts by improving indoor environmental quality during the pandemic, installing water bottle filling stations, reducing food waste, and implementing their recycling program. Recently, milk carton-shaped bins were provided for their elementary school cafeterias through a grant from the Carton Council. Recycling the milk cartons diverts almost 375,000 pounds of waste per year. Davenport Community School District continues to not only increase their recycling efforts, but to educate others on how to recycle through their district's sustainability website and newsletter. Their innovation and commitment provide great examples for others in the industry, said IRA President Alan Shoemaker. Oh, I don't think that mouse likes me. As I mentioned, our sustainability efforts have been ongoing for decades. In fact, in 1995 is when School Board Policy 305.21 recycling was first enacted. And it states, the district is committed to being a progressive environmental organization. A key part of our commitment to the environment is recycling the materials that we use as a district. Back in 2006, we were actually awarded the Best School Recycling Award from the Iowa Recycling Association. And this is a picture of the Williams recycling team at that point in time. Recycling, of course, has changed a lot over the years. And schools generate a ton of waste. And when we were looking for ways that we could make an impact, one of the things that became apparent when I realized that we actually had almost 2 million milk cartons purchased every year, that we could very easily recycle those cartons. We make a huge environmental impact and enable our community to recover large quantities of valuable materials. There's actually even a company in the Des Moines area that converts milk cartons into ceiling tiles. So it would be great to actually look and see if we possibly can go that route someday in the future. And then how much waste will our efforts divert from the landfill each year if we recycle almost 2 million milk cartons? As the IRA award said, it's almost 375,000 pounds that's diverted each year. Some people don't realize, just the liquids alone, over 327,000 pounds of excess liquids that we can keep out of the waste stream. Oh, this here is, we went about trying to get a grant from Carton Council, and they supplied us with signage such as this for educational purposes, as well as milk carton shaped bins. And it makes it easy for students to, if they didn't drink all of their milk, dump out excess liquid into a 5-gallon bucket and then easily recycle them. And it's actually kind of fun because they get a chance to stick it in that little hole in the recycling bins here. This photo here on the left is from our first recycling event, which was at Bluegrass Elementary. And then the one on the right is from Madison Elementary. This is a sample of the new labels that we have, that we're currently putting on our existing bins in the district, as well as we'll be getting a few new bins as well. We actually applied for a grant through the Waste Commission of Scott County and Davenport Public Works. And the reason that this is such a huge thing for us is that if you've noticed through the district, anybody that's gone through our buildings, a lot of the carts still say paper and cardboard only. And if you live in Davenport, you probably realize that we can take advantage of single stream recycling, and all recyclable materials now go into the same container. So this gives everyone a visual clue as far as what can and cannot be put in those recycling containers. One of the things that we wanted to do as well is to make sure that we could provide resources to not just teachers, students, and staff and family members, but our community in general. So we created a Davenport School District Sustainability site that provides those types of resources, as well as even a calendar of events if you wanted to get involved in something environmental here in our community. You can access this from our DCSD website at the operations page. So together we continue to improve, and it's wonderful to be recognized for those efforts. Thanks to everybody in the district for all you do to make a difference where we teach, learn, live, and play. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I think your presentation knocked it out of the park. I don't have any questions.
Well, great. Thank you. And thank you again for being in attendance. I have the award with me, so if we determine where we want to put that, just let me know.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And thanks for all that you do, Debbie. Much appreciated. Our next presentation comes off of a board request, and I'm very excited about this presentation as well. We have, inside of Davenport, we have lots of staff members that are aspiring administrators, and in order to become an administrator, you have to get your administrative program. Well, Miss Jen Van Fleet is currently working on her administrative program, and in order to do that, they have to get so many hours in developing programs inside of school. So she has been working diligently with a whole crew of people that are sitting in the front row here on what would it look like if we beefed up, enhanced our Special Olympics or Unified Champions inside of our district. And not only did she put together a plan, she kind of reached out to the state and looked for best practices. And so, Jen, I want to thank you so much for your hard work into this presentation. This is, again, in response to one of our board requests, and it's the start of a potential increased journey in Special Olympics, Unified Champions, that stuff. We have some very special guests with us tonight, but I'll allow Jen to introduce those. So Jen, thank you so much for being here with your very excited team. I can see that they're excited, so thank you.
We are very excited. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to come tonight, for giving us the kind of catalyst to go forward in some research. And so what we would like to share with you tonight is a proposal and some findings that we've found so far in the time that we've been doing a little bit of research. So actually, to kick this off, I'm going to introduce one of my newest friends on our team that you'll meet tonight, Mr. Brian Coffey, who joins us from the state level Special Olympics, and he's going to kick us off with an activity. I'll let him explain that. And just so everybody knows, if anybody's interested in the slides, we have the short link in the top right corner. This is for anybody. And when Mr. Coffey here does his activity, there is a digital version of this game linked on the second slide. So some of you will have these tiles in front of you, but if you don't and you would like to do it, you have access to this. And then we'll pass out extra ones, and I'll give away to Mr.
Thank you, Jen. As I said, my name is Brian Coffey. I am a full-time staff member with Special Olympics Iowa, based in Grimes, which is just outside of the Des Moines area. I've been in my position with Special Olympics full-time for almost 5 years. I was an intern in 2012, and I have actually been involved in the Special Olympics program as a unified partner since 2004. So I just wanted to share a little bit of background of my experience with the Special Olympics programming in Iowa. As Jen mentioned, each of you and the individuals on this table here should have a Ziploc bag with some cards. These are called inclusion tiles. If anybody here is interested in participating in this is a program that's going to be thought-provoking, or a thought-provoking activity to help you understand more about the importance of inclusion of individuals with intellectual disabilities. So if you're interested, we've got a few more of these that we can pass out. Just let us know. Jen's over here walking around with some. So what I would like to ask each of you to do with your cards, go ahead and take them out of your bag. And you're going to be able to easily separate them by cards with big, bold words and then cards with activities. Take the activity cards and put them back in your Ziploc and keep out the bold words. Keep out these cards here with big, bold words. And I'm going to give you a moment to just look at those words. On both sides, you've got the bold word. On the back side, you've got the most easily definition of that word. You can always define that word on your own. And as I mentioned, this is supposed to be a thought-provoking activity to help us understand the importance of inclusion. And so what I want you to first do is take these cards, lay them in front of you, and you can order them or group them in any manner that might make most sense to you. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, but what kind of a grouping or order makes most sense? So for example, do you go from exclusion to inclusion, and what goes between? Or do you go from fear of difference to meaningful inclusion? Just group them in any way that might make most sense to you. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna talk and explain a little bit more about the cards. So we've got a variety of different cards here. Just so everybody here knows, we've got exclusion, avoidance, tolerance, situational friendship, fear of difference, acceptance, lasting friendship. We've got inclusion, and we've also got meaningful inclusion. And so what I want to do is I want to first ask if anybody here is interested, after you get them ordered or grouped how you want to, if you feel comfortable, I would like to ask one of you to maybe share how you ordered them or why you ordered them the way you did. If you don't want to go ahead and share, that's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and explain more of these as well. So if anybody does want to share, then you're welcome to. And so, as I said, there's no right or wrong way to order these. We see so many different ways of grouping and ordering them. And so what I want to explain is just a few things about each of these, okay? We all know what exclusion is. And we know exclusion happens in many different aspects of life, not specifically just excluding individuals with intellectual disabilities from one sport or from one thing or another. We know what exclusion is. We've seen it in action. We've experienced it maybe as a child and maybe even as an adult. We know what inclusion is. We know what that definition looks like. We know how to include people in programming. Some of these things, some of these words that I may have mentioned that maybe you didn't know, or maybe you do know, but you didn't actually know that you experience it often, might be fear of difference. I want to explain fear of difference. The fear of difference essentially is what it says, the fear of difference. It's when somebody's different or they do something different, and there's that fear of that. So for example, you might see a student in a classroom or in the cafeteria who maybe he or she is clicking or snapping or rocking or doing all three. And you make that conscious choice not to interact with that person. Not because you're being mean, but because you have a fear or a concern of that difference, because you don't know how to interact with that. And so through Unified Champion Schools Special Olympics programming, our goal and vision is to help everybody of all abilities to understand how to interact with people of different abilities. And that's going to be one of our first goals, of interacting and overcoming that fear of difference with young people at young ages. Moving on, we've got inclusion. We know what inclusion is. That's when we bring somebody to participate in a program. Unified is inclusion. Unified Champion Schools, unified sports. We're trying to help, as an organization called Special Olympics Iowa, help schools and school buildings to understand how to include and the importance of including people of all abilities. It's the intentional act of bringing together people of different abilities, or of all abilities. That's inclusion. And so the best way I like to describe inclusion, friends, is the invitation to the dance, the invitation to the party. That's inclusion. But now we're going to go one step further. We've got your pink card. The pink card is meaningful inclusion. There's a big difference, okay? Again, the invitation to the dance is inclusion. The invitation to dance at the dance is meaningful inclusion. So I've invited you to the dance. I've got you there. Now we're dancing. I've put meaning. I've brought you, and now we're dancing. So just bringing somebody to an event is wonderful. Getting them actively engaged at an event, that's even better. And so what my hope, dream, vision, goal, whatever you want to call it, through Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools, is to help the schools within the Davenport Community School District to understand inclusion, understand the importance of inclusion, and how we can actively engage students across the district in inclusive programming, such as sports, such as youth leadership, such as programming that's already happening in the school, just helping students at all ages understand the importance of that. So I'm going to encourage each of you to keep your cards. You're welcome to have those cards. I don't need them back. I also want to encourage each of you here, the board members, leadership team, that you're welcome to grab any of these items this evening. I'm not going to take them off these tables here. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Brian. And Brian has absolutely been pivotal on our team. And I'm going to introduce our team as we go along here before we leave. But just so that we're all grounded in what our goals were for this, we definitely heard Brian speak about encouraging meaningfully inclusive communities within our schools and using unified sports as that catalyst to encourage friendships and youth leadership. And certainly partnerships with peers with and without intellectual disabilities, and providing continuing opportunities to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, and participate in a sharing of gifts, skills, and friendships. So we try to model even a little bit of that tonight with Brian's activity, so thank you. So a little bit too, I'm gonna ask Brian, actually, I stole your slide, Brian. We practiced and I stole it. Okay, so I'm gonna let Brian come back up here and he's gonna talk about how this looks like as far as funding ways and what options we've got.
Yes, certainly. So Special Olympics, as I mentioned, we have a program called Unified Champion Schools, and that's what I really would like to bring here to the Davenport Community School District. And as an organization, Special Olympics Iowa, when we begin partnering with school buildings, individual schools, and districts, we commit to helping to support those school buildings and school districts through a variety of ways, not just through the knowledge of inclusion, not just through the resources and programming activities, but also through supporting through financial means. And so up here what you see is that for this school year, we're committing for each individual school building that we partner with a support number of $300 for unified clubs, extra equipment, and unified champion schools as soon as each school building is registered. So that those fundings will be granted to the school district once all of our anticipated schools have been registered. Additionally, we host a program in March, at the very beginning of March, called Respect Week, much like a homecoming week, but instead of talking about running over and beating up another school, we talk about inclusion and respect and really encouraging others. And so that runs a lot like a homecoming week, where schools are doing activities and maybe parades in their buildings and door decorations. And for Respect Week, we commit to $500 per individual school building as well for this year. And lastly, each individual school building will have one liaison or one teacher who is the main point of contact person between that school and our office. That person will communicate with myself throughout the school year, as well as with Nancy Shannon, who is a very important part of our programming. And so that person at the end of the school year will also receive a $200 stipend from our office. So these dollars are dollars that will be spent on your school students' programming. Also keep in mind that each year this is grant funded, so it can change from year to year. I think that's important for you to know.
And side note, Miss Nancy Shannon is a Davenport teacher veteran, so she's now our Eastern Iowa regional coordinator for Special Olympics, so she's a part of our team as well. And so in our research, working with Brian and Nancy, this is kind of the timeline that has started to kind of shape up as we're asking questions about what might this look like. So if we're going to look at a potential 3-year timeline, this first year would really be about introducing us to what this looks like and getting up and running. So it could look like club meetings. It could look like an entire school deciding to engage with it. Brian talked about Respect Week in March. There are also, you think about Special Olympics and everybody has an image in mind about a really awesome event they've attended or had someone attend. So for our younger students, we've got Young Athlete Play Day. And for our junior high and high school students, we have Unified Miniature Golf that we could absolutely do in year 1. Year 2, as we look forward, the theme would be strengthening. And so we would be looking at expanding those unified sports and looking at how we really empower our student youth leadership within Unified Champion Schools. And then year 3 is really about sustaining. So Brian, in his role, would be a side-by-side partner with us for those 3 years, but we don't want to do this for just 3 years and then fold underneath that. We want to be sustainable and empowered by the time he's still our friend. He's never going to not be our friend, but not next door to us all the time. So that's kind of the anticipated timeline that we've talked about with Brian. And some steps we've already taken. So the first thing that happened was, in looking at this, I knew I needed to have some critical friends. So right away, I reached out to Ann Schultz, who is our teacher innovator for PE and Health, K-12, and I reached out to Susan Downs, and Susan Downs added on Lynn Kelker, and both of them have been instrumental from their special education department leadership, and that really formed our planning and research committee. We reached out to Brian and Nancy almost at the same time. They were going to reach out to Davenport to talk about some options. So it was this odd kind of like, oh my gosh, I was just going to call you. So we were really happy, and we've had a really great team. And so then we really wanted to think beyond. TJ mentioned this is part of my clinicals I'm doing this semester. Again, we don't want this to fold. We want to have a healthy baton toss, pun intended, for as this goes on. So we wanted to conceptualize, what does this look like? And so we knew this would be largely teacher driven, but also other people on the team. But we wanted to have kind of a leader for this year who could look at maybe down the road a longer range support. And so we again turned to Ann Schultz, who has done a ton for our PE and health teachers. And when you look at those delegation managers that Brian mentioned in each school as a teacher leader, like Ann right away would be able to work with us on helping to identify who might that be. We've tossed around lots of ideas in just our brainstorming of different roles that would serve well as a delegation manager, but Ann certainly has been pretty pivotal in that conversation. And then we have started to investigate that long-range plan. What does this look like? The good news is we were never starting from scratch. Davenport has a history of participating in Special Olympics. Nancy did a lot of that while she was here as a teacher. And then there are other pockets of that already happening in our community. And even today, I learned of another one. So we want to keep on connecting those networks. And then through a simple Google search, we stumbled upon the state Special Olympics, and we got connected with Nancy and Brian immediately. So there is a wealth of information already out there. So when Brian talks about supporting our implementation, they have it down to a science, and they've done this with other districts and other schools, and it's a solid partnership. So those are the things we've done so far. And then we knew that in that learning that we wanted to network with Eastern Iowa Special Olympics. We wanted to review what our current community involvement and with inclusion and unified sports and champion schools. And we wanted to have that ongoing partnership with Special Olympics Iowa for guided implementation. And we definitely wanted to talk about consideration for safety and participation in times of masking and social distancing. And we wanted to talk about the funding. How do we do this sustainably in our current budget situation? And so Brian presented a little bit of that information already for us. And just kind of a preview, because everyone loves like the actual events where the kids get to show up and the lights in their eyes and they're having a great time. So some of the things that you would see right away would be us talking about unified champion schools and unified sports and potentially even unified PE classes. We talked about Young Athlete Play Day, we talked about Respect Week, and then there's a whole host of other sports, competitions, and programs that are available to our students. And as we go further and further, we can learn more and more about those, but there's just so much that our kids can get involved with. So the next steps for us as we see it so far, we want to provide more information. So we're here tonight providing this presentation on our proposal. We want to collect feedback. We have not yet sat down with building principals or building staff because we're just kind of in a research phase right now and coming here. But we would not be able to go forward without their partnership and conversation. We would want to research other communities and their involvement with Unified Champion Schools. Brian's pointed us towards some other really great solid examples, even in our Quad City community that we could go visit, or talk with. We would want to survey our staff for interest in that being that delegation manager role within their building and participating in the program. We would want to continue research of interest, such as Unified PE or other events that you saw listed. And then we would want to start working with those schools that were interested this year to begin the long-range plan. We all agree that we want to start slow to go fast. We want to find the schools that would want to start this year and build that implementation. And so that we don't build something that, again, that's going to fold in a couple years. We want this to be a sustainable option for our students. And we're going to open up for questions here, but I want to make sure that you also had access to everybody's contact information. So you'll see our team on here, including Brian and Nancy, who are from outside of our organization. So in case you needed their email or names one more time, they are on this slide as well. So that is the information we want to present to you in a proposal tonight. So we'll just open up for questions or feedback from anybody. And thank you for letting us present, and thank you for my team. Everybody played a part. I said I would do the slides as my homework assignment, but they all helped. So,
Other questions? Director Hayes.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this program. You had mentioned building the schools up. Do you have like a targeted amount that you're looking for like maybe like a pilot program first, or how are you planning? What are your visions for that?
so we've looked at a lot of different proposals, and with so much going on, we want schools to want to get engaged with us, who want to do it and want to partner with us. So we'd love to have a handful, and I don't want to speak for anybody because we haven't even talked to the principals yet, so we don't want to make assumptions about numbers of people, but reasonably we talked it upwards of even like secondary schools and a handful of elementaries. That would be like probably max that we could reasonably, and that's kind of a big implementation for year one, even if we just had one or two schools that really wanted to start off with us this year. So we'd really work with whichever schools want to start.
Okay, thank you.
Director Snyder.
These cards are intriguing. I mean, there is so many applications for these outside of special ed, outside of education in general. I mean, these things basically just talk about simple human decency. Outstanding.
Absolutely. And again, I'd credit Brian for bringing that. He knew right away. He said, can I start with an activity? He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And that was kind of my aha, because when I went into this, I thought of Special Olympics as that standalone event. And when we got further into it, we learned more about Unified Champion Schools and the inclusion piece of it. And then it's our students with and without disabilities. It's everything. It's about working together and just being good to one another and loving each other. So at all ages.
Director Peck.
Thank you for presenting to us. First of all, appreciate it, all of you. So I had a couple questions. So when this becomes sort of the idea is to build this into something sustainable, assuming that, everything goes according to plan. And Mr. Coffey, you said that it was a grant-funded program for the first 3 years. So what, to you, does that sustainability look like? Does that look like a commitment from the district in terms of finances, or does that look like further grant work, or is it a combination of both? How does this typically work in?
We asked the same question. So what Mr. Coffey talked to us about was in those implementation years, you really want to build up. So for example, like, are you looking for equipment because you really want to beef up like the bowling team? Okay, well, let's get that purchase in those 3 years that you have a nice set of equipment for wherever you want to focus using those funds that he mentioned. And if you want to talk any more about that, that'd be great.
Very good question, very common question that we get asked. And as Jen was mentioning, typically in that first 3 year of partnership, the amount of funding that we're awarding to the school buildings is typically going, if we plan it and strategize properly for what we're anticipating that we do in the future, activity-wise, those funds in the first 3 years will typically be able to support the future next 3 to 5 years. So for example, if we anticipate we might want to do unified bowling as teams, then in the first 2 to 3 years, let's use those dollars to purchase the equipment now. And then in the next 3 to 4 years of partnership, if the school district participates in grant making and fundraising and so on, we also as an organization have a very solid program to help schools understand how to fundraise.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So that kind of leads into my other question. You mentioned unified bowling, and I saw the miniature golf. So what we're looking at here, I mean, I can see a couple of different levels, but in terms of the unified champion schools, the sports, that's extracurricular, and so this would be like sort of like competitive sports where, you know, the bowling team at school A competes against the bowling team at school B, and the only difference is that it's a unified bowling team rather than what we've traditionally seen. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. And are there like, I don't know if leagues is the right word. Are there schools across the state? Like, does it spread that far? At
Yeah,
regionals, all that
It
kind of
goes-
stuff?
I think it goes worldwide eventually when you go. I mean, like Special Olympics will go all the way up.
Yeah.
I'm putting words in Brian's mouth.
No,
He's like,
you're-
oh my
you're
gosh,
good.
what did I sign up for? But you can keep it within your school. So Unified PE, you can do your community. It can do Eastern Iowa. I mean, it just keeps going. So most of our kids can benefit from that like local participation. And then it depends on how far they want to get engaged. And one more point of clarification on your funding question. So we can also do our own fundraising. And the first thing we asked TJ if he was willing to do the polar plunge, which they put in their manual as a really good fundraiser. So he already signed up to do that. And he can't back out now.
Thank you very much.
Any other board members have anything? Thank you for the presentation. This is something I've wanted to see in our district for a while, to make sure we have opportunities for all of our kiddos. And hopefully, I would assume at a future meeting, you'll bring a proposal to us to discuss, and then we'll take action on it at a future meeting. But hopefully we see that sooner than later. But again, thank you all for looking into this, as well as the partners at the state that are helping with this and getting pretty much everything honed in. So we'll be able to kick this off right away. I think it's great to have those opportunities for all the kiddos. And I think that's kind of cool if they can do meets with some of the area school districts, because I imagine they might do something like that, or maybe we can help facilitate that, or however it goes. But again, I can't thank you all enough for this, and this is a great thing. So again, I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate you all coming out here tonight to speak on this, as well as the cards for us. And it kind of breaks up the meeting a little bit when we can do some interactive stuff. So again, thank you very, very much. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks to my team. So everybody will stay
You have anything else? Okay.
You did a good job.
Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Beck.
Yes, I have two. First of all, I and Superintendent Schneckloth and President Gosa attended the Mississippi Bend AEA Board and Administrators Annual Banquet on Wednesday last week, which included a dinner and a presentation. The presentation was by a gentleman named Trevor Reagan, and in a complete surprise to me, it was one of the best 45 minutes that I've spent in a long time. It was really helpful and useful, both as an educator, but just as a person, talking about sort of the ways we think about how we go about learning new things. And so it was a really fantastic presentation, and thank you to the MBAEA for that opportunity. The other one is that I was able to attend the Junior High String Festival on Saturday afternoon. The students apparently participated in like a 3-hour rehearsal workshop with one of our with a retired orchestra leader, sort of like a mini version of a master class, and then all of the junior highs played together. And compared to the performances of elementary age students, you can really see the difference it makes when they start doing those lessons on a daily basis in junior high. They did a fantastic job, and it was a really wonderful performance. So,
Thank you. Director Klein-Jerome.
I would just like to tell everybody the band spectacular is tomorrow night at Brady Street Stadium. Even if you don't have kids in band, it is a very cool event to go out and watch all the junior high and high school kids out there participating. So hope you can attend.
Anybody else have any other board reports? All right. Debbie already commented on me going to Cedar Rapids, and Allison already commented on the other. And as everyone knows, or anyone whose parents in the district, obviously I think all of our high schools have had their homecomings now, so that's always nice seeing the kiddos dressed up and getting to do that. So with being no more board reports, I will move on to communications, open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at board meetings regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. I believe we have 9 open forum requests, and we will go 2 minutes apiece. And I asked when the timer goes off, please respect everyone's time and finish up so we can get to the next person. And I'm going to call them in the order that she numbered them for me. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. First, I'll list a couple, and then we have Matt Trimble, Bernard Usen. Did I say that right? Jamie Cook, James Quinn, Amanda Reinert, Hannah Doyle, Dennis Pulse, Mike Siebert, and Marcus Boland. And don't worry about keeping track of that. I will call them out as we go. Matt Trimble, you are up first.
Hi, I'm Matt Trimble, a Davenport Schools graduate and part of the Davenport Central family. I would like to urge
Make sure you name and address.
21 Oak Lane, Davenport. Would like to urge you to continue the mask mandate, CDC guidelines. And would urge you to not abandon the health and safety of over 17,000 families, students, and staff members. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble. Next up, Bernard Houston. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Bernard Houston. I live at 2917 West 65th Street. I'm speaking on behalf of my child and the other students that go to Davenport Community Schools. I just want to share that Europe's top health officials say that masks aren't helpful at beating COVID. Ireland refuses to mandate masks, and they have all sorts of reasons explaining why. Their doctors did an extensive study. Oral bacteria build up within a mask and toxicity affecting the gums, throat, lungs, covering the nose, mouth, forces CO2 recirculation, limiting the O2 intake, hypoxia, O2 deprivation, hypercapnia, CO2 rebreathing impairs bodily and mental function disorders, and it will eventually weaken the immune system. Studies have shown that face masks can affect facial development in young individuals. Medical care minister Tamara Van Ark says, from a medical viewpoint, there is no evidence of a medical effect of wearing masks, so we decided not to impose a national obligation. Dr. Anders Tegnell, Sweden's top infectious disease expert, says that wearing face masks in Sweden, we see no point for masking children. And there's other countries that are not masking their children as well. So the CDC is recommending not masking children, students under 12 at all, that this is dangerous for them rebreathing their CO2s back into their body. So Ireland, Scandinavian countries, France, Netherlands, Sweden, Italy, etc. So I'd just like you guys to reconsider this and look at, like evidences and what other people are saying just as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Jamie Cook, and then James Quinn.
I'm Jamie Cook, live at 11624 110th Avenue. I'd like to give credit where credit is due. I'm an 8-year, 5-combat tour Marine. My first deployment, I was part of Operation Phantom Fury, the second biggest battle since Way City in Vietnam. To the mothers, fathers, and children standing united to fight for the rights and freedoms, thank you. Thank you for proving that the sacrifices of my brothers, sisters, and myself were worth every second. And as for you, ladies and gentlemen, the last time in our history mandates, policies, and orders outweighed the law of the land, it birthed the most corrupt and deadly machine the world had ever seen. It started with propaganda, regulations, silencing the opposition, using public services. And then they came for the children. The generation that fought that evil we deemed the greatest in the U.S. history. They were your fathers, your grandfathers, and your great-grandfathers. Although many of them are gone, they can still see you, and they are ashamed. They are ashamed of you supporting and enforcing a freedom-restricting evil agenda. Those of you that are just claiming to only do your jobs, you are just as guilty. The only difference between then and now is this. Now looks like this. This is your credit. You show no respect for the cost of freedom. Someday you will be called home. You will be weighed and you will be judged. Semper Fidelis.
Thank you, Mr. Cook, and thank you for your service. Mr. Quinn, you were up.
James Quinn, 3536 West 29th Street. Isn't it amazing how someone can stand up here and cite all these reports and everybody has heard of them, but you guys haven't? I don't get that. Children are accosted as they walk into the school building with being forced to wear a rag to stifle any dissension from a free citizen. Those that don't comply are ordered to be isolated, alienated from their peers, denied an education, denied the student's very existence by marking an unexcused absence those who are sitting right in the building. Younger children are psychologically scarred as they attempt to understand voice tone and facial gestures to develop their ability to communicate, but they're not developing this skill of communication. I guess they'll be perfect candidates for your job. Teachers are wrestling with an administration on a power trip. Consequently, each classroom is an autonomous zone where some encourage mask wearing and others allow their students freedom. In enacting this immoral and illegal decree, you have signaled an attack on our children and an attack on our civil rights. As you terrorize our children daily with your propaganda, force your lies on our kids, and arbitrarily change the policies at your whim, the question arises as to who the real domestic terrorists are in this room. You have chosen to back one of the least effective methods of halting this virus, and in the process, you have only succeeded in issuing a mandate of chaos.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Next up, we have Amanda Reinert and Hannah Doyle.
My name is Amanda Reinart. I live at 320 Valley Ridge Road, Bluegrass, Iowa. Here we are again. I have sent email after email urging you all to consider adding the mask mandate to the agenda for this board meeting. Instead of being open to reconsidering your decision, the people in charge have done nothing but ignore and attempt to pacify and placate the parents who are rightfully disappointed in the lack of willingness to listen to and understand where these parents are coming from. Please do not forget that the members of this board were elected by the people of this district to serve, not to dictate or mandate. Decisions should be made based on relevant, factual data, the best interests of our children, and the wishes of the majority. This decision should never have been made based on money, a lawsuit, or the personal beliefs of the members of the board. It is now clear that the majority does not want this mandate. Don't forget that Election Day is approaching fast. We are awake now and we are paying attention. We will continue to attend every regular board meeting, and we will absolutely make our voices heard on Election Day. Look at your surrounding districts and how they are making their decisions. This would be wise considering this district is currently losing students to surrounding districts at an alarming rate. How many more students are you willing to lose before you at least reconsider this decision? Bettendorf didn't even second the motion for the mask mandate after listening to the parents, not to mention watching what is going on in Davenport. North Scott Superintendent set out a notice informing people that masks will continue to remain optional. I have that right here for you all. Durant has said that unless it is mandated at a state level, the district will not implement a mask mandate. This district has not released a plan as to when this decision can be reevaluated, only further reinforcing the belief that this decision was not made based on health and safety concerns, but for fear of litigation. At the last meeting, I presented you all with the vote counts that were represented in your survey submissions. The fact that you claim to have read these before making your decision is laughable. Reading all of these submissions took me 3 days in between my responsibilities as a parent. There is just no way that the members of this board read every single response in the very limited time between the submission deadline and the emergency meeting where your vote was held. Given that parents were not permitted to speak at the emergency board meeting, as well as the fact that your decision did not reflect the wishes of the majority, I feel very strongly that this
Your time is up.
be revisited.
Thank you, Ms. Reiner.
Hello. My name is Hannah Doyle, and I reside at 2636 West 56th Street. I came here tonight to thank you, the members of the board. Without your commitment to taking and keeping powers you've unjustly bestowed upon yourselves, I never would have met the amazing group of over 900 parents that I represent. That's right, there's 900 of us. This is a small representation. Dr. Allison Beck, you stated that this is not about personal freedoms, which only extend to where they do not infringe on somebody else's freedoms. But ma'am, I beg to differ. The very word freedom, in its exact definition, is the state of not being subject to or affected by a particular undesirable thing. Your mandate is undesirable to the majority. Freedom, in and of itself, in its most true form, is the right and the ability to say no. You five have taken away the ability of our children to say no when it comes to the terms of their very own bodies. Do you know the lasting effects of that? I don't want to find out. Not only are you taking part in abusing our children, you are no longer upholding your very own mission statement that you begin every meeting with. So I want to know how long it's going to go on. When does it stop? When are you going to speak to us? When are you going to treat us like the people that elected you instead of something to be ignored? Most of you aren't even making eye contact with me. Most of you can't even take the time to pay attention to what we're saying to you. I'm holding my daughter in my hands. I'm fighting for her right to be free, because this is about freedom. This is about medical freedom. This is about medical parenting. My name is Hannah Doyle, and I'm here to officially put you on notice that we, the parents of the Davenport Community School District, will take back our right to choose what is right for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle, and your daughter as well. Next up, we have Dennis Pulse. Is that correct? And Mike Siebert.
How you guys doing? My name is Dennis Pulse. I live at 502 West 16th Street in Davenport. Most of these guys have already touched on everything you need to hear. There's studies out there. Go look them up. It's not that hard.
I got one right here. Yep.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just kind of weird. I kind of don't understand how my child has to go to school with a mask, like I said last time I was here, but she can go anywhere else in the community without one.
Yep.
She can go shopping. She can go to the movies. She can go to the mall. She can go hang out with her friends. She can go to a sporting event, high school, junior high, elementary, doesn't matter. No mask required. But the minute she walks in the door, first thing in the morning for school, she gets handed this. Why? That's all we want to know. Why? Why did you take it upon yourselves to make this such an important thing when everybody else in the world has already realized this does nothing to prevent coronavirus? Nothing.
Why has school become the unsafe place?
Yeah, and my daughter asked me the other day, Daddy, why is them allowed to walk around everywhere without my mask except for school? Why do I feel unsafe in school? Why do I have to wear my mask in school? Am I not safe in school like I am in the community? She's 9 years old, people. 9. Asking me this stuff. Please reconsider this mandate. Please remove this mandate for our children. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Pulse. Mike Siebert and Marcus Boland.
Really hope I don't have to use this. Does my time start now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Mike Siebert. I live at 933 South Michigan Avenue in Davenport. I'm here to speak to you tonight about bullies. For 4 years, my son has told me that his classmates tell him he should go home and kill himself. No one likes you. No one wants you to be your friend. Everyone here hates you. And even in 4th grade, a kid threatened he was going to go home and get his dad's gun and come back to shoot him. Surprised? Never heard about that from the principal? I don't think he wanted you to know, because you know what he told me? It's boys being boys. My wife and I were really apprehensive to change districts, but after this, you forced our hands. We wanted to see who was making the problem. Was it my son or was it the other kids at school? But you know, in 1 week, he's been able to accomplish something he hasn't in 6 years. He's made friends, guys. He even has lunch buddies to sit at a table with rather than just sitting by himself. He didn't mind the mask last year, except it was due to a sensory processing disorder. He scratched half his face off raw. Why? Because the kids couldn't see the sadness on his face. For the first time, he forgot his sunglasses in my car, and he didn't call me to bring them to hide his tears. For the first time, he didn't beg to stay at home, promising, "I'll be good, Dad, I promise." Last week, every day, he set his alarm at 5:30 a.m. to get himself up. He got his own clothes for the first time ever. He wasn't shy to me to get in the car, and the move has been a breath of fresh air, but a reality that you guys,
You're 2 minutes.
you
to go.
guys failed him. Enough is enough.
Your time is up.
Give his kid 2 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. This is you guys. Forget this mask. Forget this one. This one suits you better. You're clowns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. Mr. Bolden, you're up.
Marcus Bolin, 2830 Cedar Street, Davenport, Iowa. I'm going to read an article from the PMC article that is found on the NIH.gov website. It's copyrighted 2021 this year. Okay. From an infection epidemiological point of view, masks in everyday use offer the risk of self-contamination by the wearer from both inside and outside. Masks, when used by the general public, are considered by scientists to pose a risk of infection because the standardized hygiene rules of hospitals cannot be followed by the general public. The history of modern times shows that already in the influenza pandemics of 1918, 1957, 1968, 2002, SARS 2004 and 5, as well as the influenza of 2009, masks in everyday use could not achieve the hoped for success in the fight against the viral infection scenarios. The experiences led to scientific studies describing as early as 2009 that masks do not show any significant effect with regards to viruses in everyday scenario. Even later, scientists and institutions rated the mask as unsuitable to protect the user safely from viral respiratory infections. Okay, this is about the kids. Special attention must be paid to the respiration of children, which presents a critical and vulnerable psychological variable due to higher oxygen demand. Increased hypoxia, susceptibility of the central nervous system, lower respiratory reserve, smaller airways with a stronger increase in resistance when the lumen is narrowed. The diving reflex caused by stimulating the nose and upper lip can cause respiratory arrest to bradycardia in the event of oxygen deficiency. The masks currently used for children are exclusively adult masks manufactured in smaller geometric dimensions and had neither been specifically tested or approved for this purpose. In a Danish perspective study on mask wearing carried out on about 6,000 participants and published in 2020, scientists found no statistically significant difference in the rates of SARS-CoV-2 infection when comparing the group of 3,030 mask wearers with the
Sir, your time's up.
294 maskless participants in the study. Indeed, in the case of viral infections, masks appear not only to be less effective
Sir, your time
than
is up.
expected, but also not free of undesirable biological, chemical, physical, and psychological side effects. Accordingly, some experts claim that the well-intentioned unprofessionalism can be quite dangerous. Stop the child abuse. Much love.
Thank you, Mr. Bolin, and thank you to everyone who participated in open forum. Now we will move on to consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Director Snyder. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board adopt the following resolution for the adoption of bills from the bill listing period of 9/22/21 to 10/5/21. Whereas resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of 9/22/21 to 10/5/21.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes? Or Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you. I have two things to report on today. The first one is a transportation study. The board has urged administration to begin to review bringing transportation back in-house as opposed to an outsourcing contract that we currently have. So I wanted to give the board a brief update on that. I think it was 3 years ago, the administration had brought a report to the board for consideration at a committee of the whole and several regular meetings. The data that was generated during that report is still good data, and it would take a minimal amount to update that data. And so we've decided to move forward with updating that data. It was the research that was done. Josh had done some digging into it, called his contacts at the state. Would this be a reputable source of data, and had it confirmed that it was. So updating that study will be much easier than initially thought. Then when that study is done, we will bring that forth to the school board at a committee of whole to where we can have really in-depth discussions and be able to move forward from there. So Josh, anything to add on that piece?
I believe it's going to take a few months to gather all the data, just so you understand. It's not like a couple weeks and we turn this thing around. It's going to be a few months to pull it all together, but the person's working remotely, so I'm sending them the information I can that way. But TJ pretty much covered everything.
Any questions about that? We should have something to the board in a couple months. Thank you, Josh. The second piece.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Director Klein Jerome?
When's our contract up currently?
It's at the end of this school year.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck.
Yeah, do you think within that timeline we'd be able to see these data before we have to make a decision on renewing the contract?
My hope is we make sure we have this data before then. So yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The second piece, the Legislative Advocacy Committee met today, and we began planning what I consider to be a very exciting trip. With the Legislative Advocacy Committee is Dan, President Goza, and Director Postian. Every year we take several busloads of students to the Capitol, and it is an incredible event, incredible day for our students to see how our government works, to interact with our legislators and all different fashions. And it is truly a gem if you've never been inside of the Capitol yourself, it is an absolute beautiful place to be. I think President Goza described one piece. It looks like Harry Potter when the kids walk in there. You should see their eyes as they light up as they go in. Plus, their classes that they take prepare them to interact with their legislators, asking questions and interacting. And so it's a very positive piece that is scheduled for February, in February, and we will be engaging with the UEN to make this possible. And our President Goza, myself, and Director Poston plan on attending that trip, and I believe it's on President's Day. President's Day. So it's a beautiful trip. Our students are excited about it, and it's always a wonderful event for our students to see. And the governor is always so gracious to meet with our students and interact with them, and so it's much appreciated.
Again, it is on President's Day when the kids don't have to be in school, and they still enjoy going up there, as well as our staff that help out with that. So we are greatly appreciating, and it is a good experience for the students in the district.
That's it. Concludes my report.
All right. Any questions on the superintendent report? All right, moving on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Director Snyder.
We have our first LZAC committee that tomorrow night that we've had in a while, so we'll have something to report to you at our next regular meeting.
All right, thank you. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, I will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the contract with McGraw-Hill to purchase Alex subscriptions for the 2021 through 2024 school years in the amount of $65,625.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Director Snyder.
That dollar amount of $65,625, is that total carrying us through 2024, or is that per year? The only reason I ask is right now we're in a single year contract for school year 2021, so.
I'm pulling it up. That's our 3-year price, is my understanding.
And it looks like it's based on 1,200 subscriptions. If that number fluctuates, say, next year, the year after, are we able to then accommodate those students and we add to it, or how does that work?
Where are you pulling that number from? I see 1,750 is what we requested.
Oh, never mind. 2021 was 1,200 subscriptions. So 1,750 is this year. So I guess same question, different number.
Right. So usually they'll flex up and down with us, and given our enrollment and kids going online, that's definitely a number that would cover us as we are right now. But we can always reach back out to our sales rep there and flex that.
All right.
Director Beck.
He asked my question.
Oh. Any other questions? I do have one question on this. Obviously this is going to take some class time away from something when they're using this program, correct? So, what are we doing? I don't know how I want to word that. What are we doing to offset that? Because obviously they're losing class time on a specific, whatever subject they're working on at the time when they do this. So then what are we doing to make sure we're making up for that?
That's a great question. The ILDs and I have had that on the junior high principal agenda and working through the current way that they're using the program for this school year, and then trying to be more unified for next school year in terms of, will this happen during math class? If so, how many days per week? Will we use our MTSS time in addition to math time? And just trying to include the principals' voices in that, as well as getting feedback from the teachers about how we'll have to adjust our core math instruction in order for this program to be effective also. So we're kind of in the storming stage of it right now, trying to figure out what's the system that's going to work best so that we can maximize the kids' minutes, as well as honor that they still have math curriculum to teach every day too.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will. Or you got your hand raised, Bruce? Or are you waiting to vote, or you got a question?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. It looks like you had your hand up. All right. So seeing no other discussion, I will call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.02?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve the contract renewal with Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services in the amount of $263,844.93
Thank you, sir.
for provision of Transitional Alliance Program services.
Sorry for cutting you off. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.03?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
the policy committee recommends the board approve policy 601.01 school calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. And we're on to discussion items. I'll do the first one.
First one's you.
Yeah. We need to have a discussion on who we want to be the delegate and carry the votes for the district at the ISB convention or ISB assembly. I won't be able to do it because we have a state board meeting that day, and I want to make sure that I will be there for that. So I will open it up to anyone that wants to volunteer.
I'd just like to say, Bruce, 2 years ago, you were our delegate. Would you be willing to do it again this year?
Yeah, I would do it again.
We have a winner.
Bidding's closed. All right, Director Pot. Well, we'll actually vote on this at another meeting, but I think you'll get white ticketed on that one. All right, next item is the long-range facilities plan. I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President Goza. Tonight we have Matt Wolfert with us today from Bray Architects. He's going to be giving us an overview of the process that we'll be utilizing in Davenport to begin to engage our entire community on the long-range facility plan. I'm very proud of the work that has been occurring so far, and everything that Bray has said they were going to do, they've done so far. And First of all, I want to thank you for your commitment to the district and your team that's here. It's the work has been great so far, and just for the board and the community to know, we have a standing working meeting. We have items that we are getting accomplished. A lot of it is behind the scenes work that is just getting the ball rolling, but also we have 2 board members that meet biweekly with our long-range facility planning committee to ensure that the community's voice is heard, that we're heading in the right direction. And those members are President Goza and Director Potts. And the conversations have been very rich. It's been very valuable to have Director Potts' knowledge of the district and on the team in President Goza's construction trades industry background on that team. So far, we are moving forward. Everything is right as Bray said it would be as the onset, which I'm very proud to announce. With that being said, Matt, I'd like to turn it over to you. The teams of the committee I encourage you to jump on. So Josh, if you have anything, Kevin is also a big part of our team because we know our finances have to be in line as we move forward as well. And so thank you so much for being here tonight. And I will hand these. You want these out right now, Matt? Okay, I'll hand these out. Matt's prepared packets for us, so you wouldn't have to download them. So.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent, for the introduction. 2 other Bray team members joining me tonight, Kathy Duda and John Mahan, both members of our Quad Cities team, and excited to join you. As Superintendent introduced, we're going to walk through a process, really kind of a schedule and process related conversation for the most part this evening. We're not anywhere close to solutions and all the stuff that will likely get the most interest and excitement, but as you all know, process is extremely important. And a huge part of the process we're undertaking involves a great deal of engagement. So hopefully the schedule that you had a chance to look at, and it's up on the screen now, has 4 main areas of engagement. The first is the Facility Master Planning Committee. I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on that this evening. It's a big effort. That's going to be a group of 1 parent and 1 staff member from each of our schools. So you think, a 60-ish person team that is going to be meeting for basically from November through April, about 7 or 8 different times to really help us have a good constructive conversation about the long-range planning for our school facilities in the district. We're also going to have a community action committee. This is going to be a group that we're still in the process of forming. They're going to meet a couple of times in early 2022. And the main objective of that group is to get some of our key influential community members across all spectrums, elected officials, community organizers, others that don't have the time to spend 8 evenings and they're not members of our staff or are a parent in our schools, but have an important voice. And they're going to help us kind of do a check-in a couple times throughout the process to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. They're going to bring questions to the forefront that we should be thinking about. So another lens of your entire community and district is going to be brought forth through the Community Action Committee. We're going to have 2 open community input forums. These are going to be facilitated dialogues around facilities, bringing other members of the community who are interested in learning more to the table and allow them to, again, ask questions, provide us critical feedback on the process, on the potential solutions that are being considered. And then the final piece, and I will say, even after we get through all 3 of those, we won't have any sort of statistically valid data or sample of your community because it's really difficult to get the appropriate amount of turnout to attend at many of these meetings. And so the community survey is the 4th major engagement effort that we're proposing to undertake. And this would be a process whereby a survey would be mailed to every home in the Davenport Community School District. They're typically about 8 pages long. They're completed either electronically through an exclusive code, so you can only use it once, or you can fill it out and mail it back. But that process typically will result in about an 18 to 20% response rate. And it'll give you a really predictable sample and ability to disaggregate that data to see how do our non-parent, non-staff group, you'll hear that as we get down the road a lot, how does that group feel? That's 70+% of our community. And they're an important voice. So those are kind of the 4 levels of engagement that we're talking about right now. The first one, which we're going to jump into, is the most immediate and the largest group, is our Facility Master Planning Committee. So on page 2 of your handout this evening is the committee charge. So whenever we begin a committee like this, we want to make sure that we're giving clear direction to that group of what are their roles, what are their responsibilities, what are we asking them to undertake as we go through that process. And you'll see there's 2 things that probably jump off the most is we're asking the Facility Master Planning Committee to focus a great deal on macro level concepts. We are not asking them to get down into determining if a school should be open, closed, expanded, etc. I think one way to look at this is if, and I should jump back on the first page, I apologize. A key piece of this is going to be enrollment projections. So a part of our service is working with an independent company called MD Roffers. He is in the process of doing a really thorough enrollment projection and analysis of the school district. We have connected him with all 4 municipalities, so Bluegrass, Walcott, Buffalo, and the city of Davenport have all been engaged and will be engaged in this process. And he will be making some projections. Anybody that's ever dealt with enrollment projections, it's a little bit of crystal ball work, right? There's no perfect ability to say in 5 years and 10 years where you're going to go. But whenever we're talking about school facilities, long-range planning, and the concept of right-sizing, it's important that we have an agreed-upon data set as to where we need to be. And so let's say that report comes back and says the school district's predicted to be 15,000 students in 10 years. When we're working with our Facility Master Planning Committee, we're really going to be working through the lens of if we were starting from scratch, didn't have a single existing building, didn't have a grade configuration, what would be in the best interest of our students? What's the right grade configuration? What's the right quantity of schools? What's the right size elementary school, for example, that's efficient to operate, that provides access to all the resources and programming we can provide? So really looking at a long-range facility plan through the lens of what opportunities and advantages can we offer to our students. It will get emotional. People will leap to conclusions about what school is going to stay open, which one might not. We're going to do our best to keep that at the macro level and really make sure we're looking at visioning what Davenport can be moving forward. So the charge you will see really kind of outlines their roles and responsibilities. The next 2 pages, 3 pages, 3, 4, and 5, are a bit of the same. This is really the invitation to our Facility Master Planning Committee members. So the first page really is the charge. The second page is just some norms or some roles and responsibilities that they will have as committee members. The bottom of page 4 are the meeting dates and where the meetings will be held, and we'll touch on that in a second. And then the final 2 pages of your handout, page 6 and 7, are a detailed schedule with preliminary topics. So we've identified dates. We're going to be meeting on Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8. You can see the preliminary meeting topics that we're going to be working with our Facility Master Planning Committee on starting November 30th and ending in basically late March. We do have a meeting 8 to be determined. It's going to be the committee's presentation of their advisory recommendation to you as a board. So that's not determined yet, but will be as we get a little closer to that. But what you'll see is we're planning to meet at a variety of schools. Some of our schools that are in better condition. Some of our schools that maybe have some need. We're meeting in schools in all geographies and in all parts of our community to make sure that we are experiencing the neighborhoods that our schools exist in. And we're visiting to close the efforts, one of your children's Village West for the final meeting. So with that background, more than happy to take any questions you have, but the goal for tonight was to introduce the process to you. November felt like it was a long way away when we began this. It's coming quickly, and so we're excited to get rolling with the Facility Master Planning Committee and begin to take them on the journey of helping you create a long-range facility master plan for the district.
Director Klein-Drone?
I have 2 questions. The staff member that is being selected from each building, do they also live in the Davenport district? I mean, they could be in Bluegrass, Buffalo, Walcott, or Davenport, but are they, invested in, I live here, I work here, I'm on this committee, or could they be living in Bettendorf, Rock Island, PV, whatever?
As I answered, we did not dig into where the people live. And so we did not ask if they lived in the community of where that school is. They're bringing the expertise that I work in this school. This is what the students in this school need. And so I don't want to speak for for Matt. In this instance, that teacher is there to bring the expertise from inside that building. And those people were selected by the administrator in that building for having a passion for teaching and knowledge and understanding of what it would, the successful student environment inside that building. But that's something that we can definitely look into. That they're more regional because not all of our teachers work in the boundary of where their students go to school. So that regional piece, that community piece, is really more about the parent that is inside of that group.
Correct, TJ. I would agree. It's not essential that they are a resident of the school district because we're really looking for them to bring the educator lens to what is the best student experience we can offer. And by having a cross-representation across the district and across all of our grade levels, we're able to achieve that.
And second, the Community Action Committee, once it has been established, could you share the names with us as a board so we know who is on that?
Absolutely.
Great question.
Director Passion.
So with your timeline here, you're showing a presentation of final report to the board September of 2022. So as a board, we're looking at this as far as really taking any sort of action. It'll be the end of 2023 school year before we can really do anything as far as changing anything as far as the buildings are concerned. Would that be correct?
Anything that would not require any sort of an investment or reconfiguration, if there were to be a right sizing or a consolidation or closure that you would like to consider as a board based on this work, that doesn't require an expansion or a renovation or something to increase the capacity. The timing of that action would likely be, as you described, something in the fall of 2022, which would mean that that could be effective for the beginning of the 23-24 school year.
Okay, so that, and again, I know as you spoke before, you want to look at the whole big picture, but I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around how long this is all going to take. So if we decide, there's going to be some building changes and there's, whether it's closing buildings, building new or whatever, we're talking almost 2025 before, say, new construction would be completed. Would that be correct?
The scale of the investment would obviously drive the duration of that timeline, but I don't think you're far off in that. I can give you, for instances, of another district of some significance that is in a position right now we're working with has the ability to potentially consolidate or close 2 elementary schools without an investment. Those are obviously, assuming the will of the board is there to take that action, they're going to be able to make those decisions without any investment. They can close an intermediate school and a high school with a significant investment, and that's similar to the timeline you described. They're on about a 3 to 4 year plan if the community agrees with that. So it will be theoretically, because again, we don't know exactly where we're going, theoretically it'll be some phases. Some could be more immediate, others may require more of a timeline as you described if an investment is needed.
Well then, and I think Karen would be in agreement with me, as we sit on the finance committee, our concern is that we're not right-sizing the district quick enough. But I also understand that this is something that you just can't rush into too. But I guess my thought would be, if there's any way that we can speed up the process, I think from a financial standpoint, it's going to be critical.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess your presentation knocked it out of the park.
Excellent. Well, great to see all of you again. Looking forward to the continued partnership and excited to get rolling with our Facility Master Planning Committee in the month ahead. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Director Snyder, can you handle the discussion on the policies?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got 12 policies on here for first discussion. The first one, curriculum development. When we just had this policy meeting a few nights ago, and essentially we looked at ours versus the IASB's. And when we looked at the IASB's, there was only a couple things we changed on it. Basically, you can see in the red where it's struck out. We removed decisions and put in there potentially, because as it is right now, the curriculum department, when they're adopting new curriculum, will often have parents, community members, people kind of give input on that curriculum. So they're involved in the process, but the way it was worded is that they're involved in the decision making. And frankly, us as board members isn't even involved in curriculum decision making, as that's not our forte. So that essentially is the only things we changed. Is remove the words decision and put potentially, because again, that's at the discretion of the curriculum department. Any questions, comments? And the next one, curriculum implementation, 602.02. I don't have notes in front of me, so I kind of got to glance at these. Essentially, this is the same thing. We just crossed out decisions, and up at the top, we put or adopted, because we don't create curriculum. Most of our curriculum is adopted, so we threw in the phrase or adopted. And that's essentially it on that. And then curriculum evaluation, 602.03. And this was just straightforward right out of IASB, and there were no changes made to this one. Pilot experimental innovative projects. And again, these numbers, for what we had with our numbers, we're not changing numbers just to rehash. We're going through policies, adopting the policy, and then when we're all through the policies where we're on the IASB manual with the changes that we made to customize to the DCSD, then we will adopt the number change all in one fell swoop. So don't look at the numbers here and say, how come the number varies from IASB? Because you will still find some that vary. As far as pilot experimental innovative projects, this is another one that we just decided the IASB's said it better than what we had. 603.01 basic instruction program. On our policy, we had this huge fluff, feel-good paragraph at the beginning that was just a waste of basically paper. But we did have one paragraph in ours that we liked, and that's what in green that we moved to the second paragraph. And we also then did, as far as the graduation requirements, because every district has different graduation requirements, so we had to tune that to what we do here in Davenport. And that's essentially that in a nutshell. And we did add a pre-K in there because we have pre-K services. Any questions? .02 summer school instruction. Yes, 602.0. I think that's supposed to read 603.02. Really, all we had to do here was insert our district's name. Even I could handle this one. So that's really the only change with that is, or not change, but our variation of the IASBs. 603.03 special ed. Sorry, I'm slow. I'm used to using a mouse. The only thing we added to this one was our little sentence that we use superintendent or superintendent's designee. In fact, just to rehash on that too, the reason why we put that in, a lot of the IASB policies, a lot of the other districts are much smaller districts where the superintendent, you may have a central office of 5 people. A district our size, superintendent can't do all of these things. It's impossible. So that's why we say superintendent or superintendent's designee.
Could I just ask a question? I know it's a mandatory policy. Birth through age 2, are they actually in our building, or is AEA providing that at AEA, or I just curious?
That service is in the home, so our staff, AEA staff, go in the home and work with families.
Okay.
To provide that service for your Davenport residents.
Yeah, so we provide the funding, but you provide the people to go to the homes.
It's an AEA service, so it's not, there's no district.
Got it. Thank you.
Good.
There was just one thing too on that summer school policy that Director Snyder and Director Beck and I talked about. 603.02. The way it's written, which maybe has not been past practice, is that the board may offer summer school, and it's worded as such that we as a system would come to you in late winter, early spring with recommendations for summer school. What programming we think we need, what our kids are showing us should be on the books in the summer, and what kind of staffing and models that we would use. And so I thought that was, I liked the way it was written in this policy that we're considering adopting, because based on what I've heard coming in July, that maybe had not been as transparent or clear for everyone prior to summer. So that's something that you can expect to see in late winter, early spring, if this policy moves through as written.
All right, and then career education. Again, we added superintendent's designee. The teaching about religion. This policy is just straight from the IASB manual. And I apologize, I don't have much more notes on this. Allison's the note taker and takes exceptionally good notes at these meetings. So I feel like I'm kind of robbing you guys of some knowledge, but by all means, if there's any questions you have, don't hesitate to ask us, and we'll get you the answer before the next meeting. 603.10, global education.
Director Snyder, I believe global education and the religion education that was the previous policy were both policies that she was checking back with IASB on also.
Okay.
Just because of some of the recent, I can't remember the House file off the top of my head, but some of the more recent language about freedom of speech and racism, for example. And so we wanted to make sure that the policies as written by IASB as sample policies were 3 years old. And so we were just double checking, I believe, right? That they had not updated those based on the information that was just put into place this past summer.
Yeah, I know she had a list of questions for Siobhan.
Mm-hmm.
Private instruction, 604.01. Again, all we did was insert Davenport Community School District. Again, straightforward out of the IASB. And individualized instruction. And I don't recall anything earth-shattering on this one either. There's no notes on it, so just, again, straight from the ISB. There was a number of these that we had a policy on that was similar, but had just outdated, didn't follow our practices. And there was a lot of these that we didn't have policies on, even some of them that the IASB said, we highly recommend you do have one. So a lot of these are new ones, and Allison would be able to tell us which ones are new and which ones are not. But these are all from the IASB manual.
The most recent one, the private instruction too, is a super important policy, especially post or COVID related, that we've had lots of Davenport families reaching out, and they had chosen private instruction for their children during the last year or so, and we didn't have a policy on the books necessarily to answer the questions now that the kids are coming back to school in person, and what credits will we be giving or not giving, and what can they do and not do. So this is taken directly from the Iowa Department of Education. So this will be a really good place for us to reference when families have those questions moving forward.
Good. And if there's nothing else, we can move on to policy 601.02, school day, for the second discussion. And essentially, the final changes we have in here is we put at the discretion of the superintendent, the district may utilize remote learning opportunities that are available and permitted by law during the period of closure. And the reason why that's in there is that leaves it at the discretion of the superintendent with the understanding that I think everybody on our board unanimously agrees, including our superintendent, that in-person instruction is better than online instruction. But if we are faced with a year where, say, we have just an absurd number of snow days, ice days, to where we are so far behind that, you know, we need to do something, that gives the superintendent the flexibility without bringing the board together to have a virtual snow day. Because I guess I'll go ahead and open that up for discussion before I give my opinions on it, so.
My question is, it says, and permitted by law, but I guess when I asked, TJ said we weren't permitted by law, so it really isn't giving our superintendent the authority if we don't have the law to back us up. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
I believe that that is correct. and we're going to double check this with IASB, that we are not allowed to use remote learning days for snow days. When we have a snow day, we're not allowed to use remote learning days. And so I believe this language is towards the pandemic response. I'm going to lean on my cabinet on this one. When the governor pulled back the policy that she had for that, the remote learning went away with it. So I'm going to lean in on my cabinet for this one as well.
So that's my understanding as well. And as I read this, it would make sense to me that if you're adopting a policy, then this could potentially span the time that if the governor were to change, you wouldn't have to rewrite the policy. So it would suggest that if the law changes, then at that time, if the superintendent were to determine that this was needed, then go ahead. But at this point, when we looked into it, that was my understanding as well, Superintendent Schneckloff.
So that if the law does change, this allows that response to become immediate. Does that answer your question? It is confusing, though.
It does, because it makes it sound like we can do it.
It does.
But we can't because of the law.
It is confusing, but.
Dr. Barney, do you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to add that if we end up meeting the requirements that are put in place in order to maintain virtual as an option, this would allow us to be in that position at that point. So whatever the state defines, there are certain parameters that may be in place that a district must have in position in order to offer a virtual alternative. Then once we do that, if we're able to do that at some point, this would cover us at that point in time. So we need to investigate what those things look like at this point.
Director Poston.
Well, I want to go on record that I'm against any remote learning for a snow day. Okay, I think it's ridiculous. We're taking too many days away from our kids already, and so we need to have them in the classroom. So remote learning for a snow day, it's crazy.
Anybody else? Well, I agree completely with Director Poston as well. I think it's wrong, one, to ask teachers, especially if they have young kids at home, well, you're going to have to figure out daycare today and continue to teach online, to where other staff positions of salary don't have to work that day. I think it's a big conflict of interest, not to mention we've all seen the horrible effects of online learning with our kids, and unless they can be sitting in the classroom with a teacher in front of them, the teacher can't be effective. It's very, well, I'm not going to say they can't be, it's very difficult for them to be effective. So I completely agree with Director Poston on that. My other question would be, say there was a building that had a water main break and it was going to take a week to fix it. You know, would something like this be utilized maybe for one building, to where instead of kids, I mean, I don't know how, what would a scenario of something like that be, that maybe we should have this policy in place for something like that? Not COVID related, but rather than kids who can't attend a building for an entire week, at least can do something.
And again, I do not believe our law would pertain to that, so that would still not come into play for that.
Okay.
We would have to figure it out.
Perfect. Director Potts, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say the idea of remote learning on a snow day is, you know, the teacher gets the electronic message at, let's say, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they have to prepare an online lesson. Okay, they're not going to do that. They're going to have a lesson in their back pocket that may not be connected to exactly what the curriculum is they're teaching at the present time. And so the value of it, as far as the continuous learning on the topic that is the topic of the day, will be there.
And I agree, except I don't see the value of adding lots of days at the end of the year, because then you have a fourth quarter term that is very, very long. And like this past year went very far into June. that's also a problem. But I'm not saying that kids would be prepared to necessarily have a remote day because there was a snow day. Who's going to say, oh, take it home just in case? You know, that wouldn't happen. So I get that, but I also think the way we handle it by just tacking it on to fourth quarter is also a bad idea. So somehow we got to find a balance to even up those quarters when you're taking those snow days, usually during second or third quarter.
Director Beck.
I apologize if this has already been mentioned, but I guess for me, I'm looking at this as a way of allowing us flexibility should we need it, but not necessarily saying that we will. And so if the board feels like, and at the you know, the recommendation of the administration feels that allowing for the flexibility is important, then I would say we should have it as written. But if that's not really an issue, I mean, then we don't need to have that flexibility. If we're never, you know, if there's no scenario in which we would ever want to use this option, then we don't need that flexibility.
So what is our next steps on this, Superintendent Schneckloff, as far as verifying the verbiage?
So I will take this paragraph right here and I will work on it. I'll bring it back to our policy committee with a recommendation for it looks like the fourth paragraph down, and we'll define it with the feedback that the board has given here.
That sounds
Just on a related piece to that, we have an established calendar committee that does look at those. How can we mitigate the factors of extending the school year, because there are diminishing returns after a certain point. And so what does that look like if it were built in moving forward? So sorry, I'm a little off there. You can see I'm starting to rain a bit. It's good.
And that is
Good
it.
feedback.
All right, no other discussion. We'll move on to board requests. Is there any board requests?
Real quick, Mr. President.
Yes.
Allison, could you send like a list of the one piece of information I didn't have is on these policies for first discussion, which ones already that we had a policy in place that we are adopting over the new one? Do you have that list that you could send to Brenda and she could send it to the board, because I didn't
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
for them to reference?
Yeah, I have it right here. I apologize. I forgot to.
Nope.
I didn't get a chance to do that before our meeting, but yeah, thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
All right, board requests. I have 3 board requests. The first board request is from Director Potts. Date of request is today. Information requested is a request for information. Description of request. What were the circumstances and parameters surrounding the decision to house the ACIU/Help Legal Aid at Jefferson School? Why are you making this request? I read in the QC Times that they were now operating out of Jefferson. When would you like this information? Soon. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, you got a long last name. It takes me a minute to write that down. All right. Second request from Director Klein Jerome, dated today. This one is a request for information as well. Description of request. Share information regarding exit interviews and what we are doing to recruit and retain staff. Why are you making this request? This is part of the superintendent and board goals. When would you like this ASAP? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Postian. Third board request is from Director Postian, dated today. This one is a request for information as well. Description of request, enrollment numbers after the end of spring semester and after October 15th. Is that correct? Okay. Why are you making this request? Want to know for planning purposes, especially for Finance Committee, when would you like this? As soon as possible. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Any other board requests? Administrative reports.
None at this time.
All right.
So moved. Oh,
Not today. Board reflection. I'm going to start with Director Potts.
I would say my takeaway, I have two takeaways. First takeaway is the information we received on Special Olympics and the entire, obviously that there's a plan to enlarge and expand that so that it isn't simply a standalone single event, which is really good. The second, and I think probably the information we received tonight that has the potential for the most substantial long-range impact on our school district is the long-range facilities committee, because this is not, we're used to the long-range facility plan that had a list of what building was going to have what done to it when. And this is an entirely different approach that requires basically the reimagination of what the school district could or might look like. And that's groundbreaking.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Snyder.
Well, two things. One, I think absolutely the Special Olympics presentation, those cards. I said during their presentation, I mean, these cards are beyond Special Olympics, beyond education, beyond, they apply to everything. They apply to adults. They apply to all walks of life. It's simple, basic, decent humanity. So I think there's lessons in there for everyone. And also the recycling award for our school. It's something you don't really hear about. It's something that, you know, apparently I didn't even know a year or two ago we were one of 5 districts in the country to receive this award. I mean, that's pretty huge. So good job, Davenport.
Director Hayes.
I like the inclusion with the Special Olympics program and the long-range planning to keep it going, not just for the 3 years, but beyond that, because we really need to have some special program with them. There's sports for middle school, there's soccers with the dad club, and I just feel that the special needs need to have a program as well. I also like for the long-range planning, the fact that a school representative and a parent would be included, and he had mentioned about 60 people being on that team. So I feel that whatever decision is made at that time, that there will be quite a bit of community support to basically justify why whatever is being done is taking place.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome.
I also think it's great that we are recognized for our recycling efforts. It's been going on a long time. When I was in the building, we did it, but we keep getting better and better and more. So hats off not only the people who got the program started, but the students and the staff in the buildings, because they're the ones who are actually putting in the recycling. So that's really great. I'm also glad to see the transportation study. I'm glad it's not taking a lot of work, that there's ways to do this easier, but I also think it's an important thing to look at. So I appreciate the fact it's getting started. Oh, and I do want to say the Special Olympics too, but it's already been said 3 times. So, but I also thought that was a great presentation of inclusion.
Thank you, Director Postian.
I agree with everything that has already been said. I think what's going to have the most, a dramatic effect on the district, though, is again our building committee, and so appreciate all the work that's been done on that, and look forward to what comes about from that.
Thank you, Director Beck.
I'm kind of agree with what everybody said so far. I think for me, the highlights are really the Special Olympics and Unified Champion Schools presentation, because it's about so much more than just one event or a couple of events that are competitions. And then the other thing I really appreciate is the transportation study. You know, for a number of years, we've been asking about the potential of keeping as much of our activities in-house as possible. And so it's nice to know that we have the ability to revisit decisions that may have been made a long time ago, that maybe don't match what our district wants right now. So I really appreciate the opportunity to revisit that. Whatever the outcome, at least we get a chance to think about it. So, and the fact that it's not going to require huge amounts of work is like the icing on the cake.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Bruce said it exactly right. The long range for me is exactly what Bruce said. Long range facility, legacy work.
Thank you. I agree with everything that everyone said. I really think that's cool that we're finally going to do something with Special Olympics. Well, hopefully we do. I think that'll be great to have those opportunities for our kiddos. And as well as getting that award in Cedar Rapids, I can't tell you how many people came up and wanted to talk to us and congratulate us on it and take pictures with us over a recycling board. I didn't even know that this stuff existed. There was a ton of people there getting awards for things. I think we were the only school district that got an award for something. So it was a big deal. We were getting people coming up to us, talking to us so much, wanting to take pictures. I didn't even get to finish my meal. They took it off of the table before I got to finish. So, again, hammering home the Special Olympics, I think that's a great thing. The long-range facilities plan, and I agree, just like what Bruce had said before when it was a plan, hey, this is going to be done at this school in this year, and then you got schools vying for it and different things pop up and stuff like that. So this is a way different approach, and appreciate all the hard work and stuff that's going to go in that, as well as involving, you know, some of the staff from the building as parents also, and to take the emotion out of it and not name a building and just work on it that way. So with that, I will.
President?
Director Potts.
There's one more noteworthy thing that occurred this week of momentous importance. Iowa defeated Penn State. Iowa's rated number 2. I move we adjourn.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.